66 million years ago, a Tyrannosaurus rex sank a tooth into the face of a duck-billed dinosaur, and that tooth stayed there, embedded in bone, all the way until a research team pulled the fossil out of the ground and realized they weren't just looking at old bones. They were looking at a single frozen second of a fight that ended almost 70 million years before humans existed. And the strangest part isn't that the tooth was there. It's what the rest of the skeleton reveals once you know how to read it properly. The fossil in question is an Edmontosaurus skull, a species of duck-billed dinosaur that lived alongside Tyrannosaurus rex at the very end of the Age of Dinosaurs. Duck-billed dinosaurs weren't small, defenseless creatures either. Edmontosaurus could grow to lengths rivaling a school bus, moved in herds, and had decent speed for its size. This wasn't an easy kill, and the skull tells that story clearly, because embedded directly in the facial bone is a broken-off Tyrannosaurus tooth, exactly the kind of injury you'd expect from a predator strike gone wrong for the predator, not just the prey. Here's where the research gets genuinely clever, because identifying a tooth stuck in bone isn't new. Paleontologists have found bite marks on dinosaur fossils before. What makes this discovery different is the method the researchers used to figure out exactly how old the attacking Tyrannosaurus was and what stage of its life it was in when the attack happened. They didn't just look at the tooth. They analyzed growth rings inside fossilized leg bones from 17 separate Tyrannosaur specimens, essentially reading age the same way you'd count rings in a tree trunk, and cross-referenced that data against new statistical modeling to build a much more precise picture of Tyrannosaur growth stages than paleontologists have had before. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should, because it flips a common assumption about how Tyrannosaurus rex actually hunted. For years, the popular image has been an adult T-Rex, fully grown, using raw power to bring down prey. What this growth ring analysis suggests instead is that tyrannosaurs went through dramatically different hunting phases across their lifespan, with younger, leaner individuals relying on speed and agility to take down faster-moving prey, while older, heavier adults shifted toward a bone-crushing bite strategy built more around raw force than pursuit. The tooth embedded in this particular Edmontosaurus skull, combined with the growth data, helps researchers place this specific attack within that broader life stage picture, essentially reconstructing not just what happened, but roughly which chapter of a Tyrannosaurus's life it happened in. There's something almost unsettling about how specific this gets. This isn't a general statement like, Tyrannosaurus hunted Edmontosaurus, which paleontologists already knew from indirect evidence. This is one dinosaur, one moment, one failed or partially successful strike frozen in bone for 66 million years, then dug up, cleaned, scanned, and cross-referenced against growth data from 17 other individuals just to answer the question of how old the attacker likely was. That level of forensic detail applied to an event this ancient is relatively new in paleontology, and it's part of a broader shift in how researchers are approaching dinosaur fossils generally, treating individual specimens less like static museum pieces and more like crime scenes that can still be actively investigated with modern statistical tools. It's worth pausing on why the tooth broke off in the first place, because that detail carries its own story. Tyrannosaurus teeth were built to withstand enormous bite forces, some of the highest bite forces ever estimated for a land animal. So a tooth snapping off mid-bite tells you the resistance from the Edmontosaurus was significant. This wasn't a passive animal caught off guard and killed instantly. Bone this dense doesn't crack a predator's tooth without serious force behind the impact, or serious resistance from the animal being bitten. Whether the Edmontosaurus ultimately escaped, died from the wound later, or was finished off in the same attack is something the fossil alone can't fully answer, but the presence of the broken tooth strongly suggests the encounter wasn't a clean, one bite kill the way predator-prey interactions sometimes get simplified in documentaries. This connects to a bigger question paleontologists have been chasing for years. How much of what we assume about predator behavior in extinct animals is based on modern comparisons that might not actually apply? Lions, wolves, and other living predators give researchers a working model for hunting strategy, but a Tyrannosaurus rex has no living equivalent. Nothing alive today shares its exact combination of size, bite force, and bipedal movement. Every conclusion about how it actually hunted has to be reconstructed indirectly, through fossils exactly like this one, bite marks, broken teeth, healed injuries on prey species that survived an attack. Each new specimen adds another data point to a picture that's still, even now, genuinely incomplete. What makes this particular find valuable isn't just the drama of catching a predator mid-attack, it's the methodology behind confirming it. Growth ring analysis across 17 specimens is a substantial sample size for extinct species, where individual fossils are rare and complete skeletons rarer still. Cross-referencing that dataset against new statistical models gives researchers a level of confidence in the age estimate that older, more casual comparisons couldn't provide. That's the quiet, unglamorous part of paleontology that rarely makes headlines on its own, counting rings, running statistics, building comparison models, but it's exactly the kind of work that turns a single dramatic fossil into something scientifically useful rather than just a striking museum display. There's another wrinkle worth sitting with, because the discovery doesn't just say something about the individual Tyrannosaurus involved, it says something about the ecosystem the two animals shared. Edmontosaurus fossils have been found in massive bone beds, sites containing hundreds or even thousands of individuals, which tells researchers these animals moved in large herds, likely as a defense strategy against exactly this kind of predator. Herding behavior only makes evolutionary sense if predation pressure is high enough to select for it, and a single tooth embedded in a skull is direct physical evidence of that pressure actually playing out, not just herd behavior inferred from bone density at a mass grave site. It's one thing to assume predators were a major threat based on statistics. It's another thing entirely to hold the specific tooth that proves it. The timing of this attack also matters in a way that's easy to miss. This encounter happened near the very end of the Cretaceous period, in the final stretch before an asteroid impact wiped out every non-avian dinosaur species on the planet. Every fossil from this narrow window carries a kind of double weight, useful for understanding a single predator-prey interaction, but also useful for understanding what the very last ecosystems on Earth before that extinction event actually looked like day to day. Researchers piecing together the final years of the dinosaur age rely heavily on fossils exactly like this one, not because any single specimen proves a sweeping theory on its own, but because enough of them stacked together start to sketch out what ordinary life, and ordinary death, looked like for these animals right before everything changed. It's also worth mentioning how rare it is for a fossil to preserve this kind of direct evidence at all. Most predator-prey interactions from this era leave no trace, since soft tissue decays long before fossilization even begins, and even bone-on-bone contact rarely survives tens of millions of years intact. A broken tooth lodged precisely where a bite occurred, on a skull complete enough to study in this level of detail, is a genuine rarity, and that's exactly why this specimen justified cross-referencing against 17 other individuals instead of being written up as a quick, isolated find. So the next time you see a photo of a fossilized skull with a tooth still lodged in the bone, it's worth remembering what actually had to happen to confirm the story behind it. Not just the discovery of the tooth itself, but years of comparative work across more than a dozen other specimens, new statistical methods applied to old bones, and a research team willing to treat a 66-million-year-old skeleton like an active case rather than a settled fact. The fight itself lasted seconds. Piecing together what actually happened during those seconds took a research team years, and it's still, in a lot of ways, an ongoing investigation.